My sister accused me of stealing $7,000 from her wedding card box to cover her honeymoon debt. My parents demanded I pay it back or face jail. They didn't know I'd already visited the venue manager. One click of a flash drive at dinner didn't just clear my name, it destroyed their perfect little world. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. I was sitting in my living room, the kind of silence around me that usually felt peaceful, but that evening, it felt heavy, like the air before a thunderstorm. I was still recovering, physically and emotionally, from the sheer exhaustion of the weekend. My sister's wedding had been a 3-day marathon of excess, stress, and forced smiles, and I had just returned to my apartment, looking forward to a week of absolute nothingness. I had taken a few days off from my job as a forensic accountant, a career that demanded intense mental focus, and I was feeling the burnout deep in my bones. I was curled up on the sofa, a heating pad on my lower back, sipping lukewarm tea, when my phone buzzed on the coffee table. It was my father, Christopher. I frowned. We had all just said goodbye a few hours ago. The brunch had wrapped up, they had headed to the airport to see Claire and Ryan off, or so I thought, and I had driven home. A call now usually meant someone had forgotten a suitcase or a flight was delayed. "Hello," I answered, my voice raspy from lack of sleep. "Olivia." The tone of his voice made me sit up straight, the heating pad sliding off my lap. It wasn't the warm, tired voice of a father after a wedding. It was cold. It was the voice he used when he was speaking to a telemarketer or a mechanic he suspected was overcharging him. It was a voice devoid of affection. "Dad, is everything okay? Did Claire and Ryan get off all right?" "Don't," he snapped. The single word was like a whip crack. "Don't pretend, Olivia. I am sitting here with your mother and your sister. We are at the house. Claire didn't get on the plane." My heart hammered a strange rhythm against my ribs. "Why? What happened? Is she sick?" "She's sick, all right," Christopher said, his voice shaking with a suppressed rage I had never heard directed at me before. Sick that her own sister would do something this low. "The card box, Olivia. The envelope box from the reception." I blinked, confused. "What about it?" "It's empty," he said. "Well, not empty. The cards are there. But the cash, the checks, every single envelope that had money in it was opened and stripped. Claire did a count just before they left for the airport because they wanted to deposit the cash for the exchange rate in Bali. $7,000, Olivia. $7,000 is gone." "That's awful," I gasped, my mind instantly racing through the security protocols of the venue, my professional brain kicking in. "Okay, well, the venue has insurance, and we need to call the police immediately to file a report so." "Stop it," he roared. I flinched, pulling the phone away from my ear. "Stop the act. Claire saw you. She saw you near the table while everyone was lining up for the sparkler exit. You were the only one near the gift table for 20 minutes. And Susan saw you putting a thick white envelope into your purse before you left." "Dad, that was my parking validation and the thank you note Claire gave the bridal party," I protested, my voice rising in panic. "I didn't touch the box. I wouldn't touch the box." "Claire is in tears," he shouted over me. "Her honeymoon is ruined because of you. She knows you've been jealous of this wedding for months. She knows you think they spent too much. So you decided to teach them a lesson. You decided to tax them." "I am not jealous. I helped pay for the flowers," I screamed back, tears stinging my eyes. The accusation was so sudden, so ludicrous, I couldn't process it. "We know you're struggling, Olivia," Christopher said, his voice dropping to a condescending, icy calm that was somehow worse than the shouting. "We know city life is expensive, but stealing from your sister on her wedding day, that is a sickness." "I am not struggling. I make 6 figures, Dad. I don't need Claire's money." "Then you should have no problem paying it back," he said finality. "We expect the full $7,000 transferred to Claire's account by tomorrow morning. If it's not there, I am not just cutting you off, Olivia. I will support Claire in filing a police report against you. Do not test me on this." The line went dead. I stared at the phone, the silence of the apartment rushing back in, but now it wasn't peaceful. It was suffocating. My hands were trembling so hard I dropped the phone onto the rug. I felt the bile rise in my throat, a physical rejection of the reality I had just been thrust into. It wasn't just the accusation, it was the readiness. They didn't ask me if I saw anything. They didn't ask if I knew what happened. They decided, instantly and without a shred of doubt, that I was a thief. The betrayal cut deeper than any knife. It was a precise, surgical removal of my place in this family. I spent the next hour in a state of paralysis. I sat on the floor where I had dropped the phone, staring at the wall. My mind, usually so adept at following money trails and spotting discrepancies in ledgers, was short-circuiting. The emotional weight of my father's words pressed down on me like a physical burden. "Claire saw you." That was the line that kept replaying. Claire saw me, but I hadn't been near the box. During the sparkler exit, I had been in the bathroom helping the maid of honor, Sarah, get a red wine stain out of her dress. I wasn't even in the main hall. Claire was lying. I forced myself to stand up. I needed to drink water. I needed to breathe. As I stood in my kitchen, filling a glass with shaking hands, my phone buzzed again. A text message, then another, then a third. I looked at the screen. "Susan, Mom, I am heartbroken, Olivia. I always knew you were sneaky, ever since you were a child and hid those cookies, but I never thought you would become a criminal. Fix this. Claire, I can't believe you. Ryan is devastated. We have to cancel our flights. I hope you're happy. You've always been a bitter, jealous bitch. Send the money, or I swear to God, I will ruin your career. I know your firm doesn't like employees with theft charges. Christopher, Dad, I meant what I said. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., or I call the sheriff." I read the text from my mother again. "I always knew you were sneaky." The memory hit me like a physical blow. The cookie incident she was referencing happened when I was 6 years old. Claire, then 3, had eaten an entire sleeve of Oreos and thrown up on the carpet. When Mom came in screaming, Claire had pointed a chubby finger at me and cried. I was grounded for a week. I had never eaten a single cookie. That was the dynamic. That had always been the dynamic. Claire was the light, the joy, the fragile princess. I was the older one, the responsible one, the one who could take it. And apparently, the sneaky one. I felt a wave of nausea so strong I had to lean over the sink. They truly believed this. It wasn't just anger. It was a confirmed bias they had held for decades, just waiting for a reason to surface. I paced the length of my small apartment. My instinct was to fold, to pay the money just to make it stop. $7,000 was a lot, but I had it in savings. I could transfer it, apologize for a crime I didn't commit, and try to salvage my relationship with them. That's what the old Olivia would have done. The Olivia who just wanted peace. But then I looked at Claire's text again. "I will ruin your career." She wasn't just hurting, she was threatening my livelihood, my license, everything I had built on my own without their help. I stopped pacing. I took a deep breath, the air hissing through my teeth. I walked over to my desk and opened my laptop. I wasn't a scared little girl anymore. I was a forensic accountant. I uncovered fraud for a living. I dealt with liars who were far more sophisticated than my sister and her husband. I logged into my email and found the correspondence chain from the wedding planning. Because, of course, I had been the one to handle the venue contract initially. Claire had been too overwhelmed with the dress shopping, so I had put down the deposit on my credit card, which they eventually paid back, partially, and I had been the point of contact for the logistics. I pulled up the contract for the Grandview estate. It was a high-end, historic venue. Expensive, exclusive, and because of the valuable art on the walls and the historic nature of the property, highly secured. I scanned the clauses: liability, catering, noise ordinance. There it was, Clause 14B, security and surveillance. For the protection of the property and guests, the The Grandview estate maintains 24-hour high-definition video surveillance of all public areas, including the foyer, ballroom, and gift intake areas. Footage is retained for 30 days. A cold, hard resolve settled in my stomach, replacing the nausea. My family thought they had me cornered. They thought I was the same scapegoat I had been at 6 years old, defenseless against Claire's crocodile tears. They were so busy constructing their narrative of the jealous, stealing sister that they had forgotten one crucial thing. I didn't just attend the wedding, I read the fine print. I picked up my phone. I wasn't going to call my dad. I wasn't going to call Claire. I dialed the number for the venue manager, a woman named Linda, whom I had befriended during the months of planning. It was late, but I knew she often worked in the office until midnight after weekend eve. NTS. The phone rang twice. Grandview Estate, Linda speaking. Linda, it's Olivia, Claire's sister. Olivia, hi honey. Did you leave something behind? We have a pair of sunglasses here that might be yours. No, Linda, I said, my voice steady, cold, and professional. I didn't leave anything, but apparently something was taken. I need you to do me a massive favor. I need you to pull the footage from camera 4, the one facing the gift table, between 9:00 p.m. and 10:30 p.m. last night. There was a pause. Is everything okay? Is this a police matter? Not yet, I said, eyeing the clock. But it might be. Can you send me the file? I'm the contract holder on file, remember? Technically, yes, your name is on the main agreement, Linda said slowly. Okay, give me 10 minutes. I'll email you a secure link. Thank you, Linda. You have no idea what you just did for me. I hung up and sat back in my chair. They wanted a fight. They wanted to talk about who was sneaky. I stared at the black screen of my laptop, waiting for the email notification. They had no idea what was coming. While I waited for Linda's email, the history of my relationship with Claire washed over me, a montage of sacrifices that had gone unnoticed. I was 29, Claire was 26, 3 years difference, but it felt like a generation. I was the practice child, the one my parents learned on. They were strict with me about grades, curfews, and money. By the time Claire came along, they were tired, or maybe they were just charmed. Claire was beautiful, charismatic, and demanding. She had a way of looking at you with wide, watery eyes that made you feel like a monster if you denied her anything. Growing up, if she broke a toy, she got a new one. If I broke a toy, I was told to take better care of my possessions. When I was in college, I worked 2 jobs to pay for my tuition so I wouldn't have to ask Mom and Dad for loans. When Claire went to college, Dad paid her rent for a luxury off-campus apartment because the dorms gave her anxiety. And I had accepted it. I loved her. She was my little sister. I defended her. When she got into credit card debt at 22, I gave her $2,000 to pay it off so Dad wouldn't find out. When she crashed her car because she was texting, I drove her to work for 3 weeks. But the shift happened when she met Ryan. Ryan was 30, a consultant with a vague job description, a leased BMW, and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He was obsessed with image. From the moment he entered the family, he amplified Claire's worst traits. Her desire for nice things turned into a hunger for status. Her occasional selfishness turned into entitlement. The wedding planning had been a nightmare. Claire and Ryan wanted a $50,000 wedding on a $20,000 budget. My parents, Christopher and Susan, had dipped into their retirement savings to help. I had paid for the florist and the DJ as a gift, totaling nearly $4,000. But it was never enough. I remembered a dinner 2 weeks before the wedding. Ryan had been complaining about the cost of the honeymoon, a luxury tour of Bali. It's just ridiculous, Ryan had said, stabbing at his steak. We deserve a break. I mean, with the stress of this wedding, we should be going away for a month, not 10 days. Maybe you could scale back the floral arrangements, I had suggested gently. Ryan had looked at me with a sneer. Easy for you to say, Olivia. You live like a monk. Claire has standards. We aren't going to have a trashy wedding just because you think we should save pennies." Claire had laughed. "Yeah, Liv, don't be such a buzzkill. We'll get a ton of cash gifts. Everyone knows the rule is to cover your plate plus extra. We're inviting 200 people. We'll probably profit." We'll probably profit. The words echoed in my head now. That was their mindset. The wedding wasn't a celebration of love, it was a fundraising event. They had counted that money before it was even in the box, and now that they had likely overspent on something else, or perhaps the guests hadn't been as generous as they hoped, they were panicking. And who was the easiest target to fill the gap? The sister with the good job and no husband to defend her. The sister Mom already thought was sneaky. The email notification pinged. From Linda at Grandview Estate subject. Requested footage, camera 4. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it. I clicked the link. The video player opened. The footage was crisp, high-definition black and white night vision, but the reception hall was well lit enough that it was in color. The time stamp read 9:15 p.m. I watched. There was the table, the white satin box with the slot in the top. Guests were mingling in the background. At 9:22 p.m., I saw myself walk past the table. I paused. My heart stopped. Did I touch it? No. I adjusted a picture frame that had fallen over next to the bow. X smiled at a passing waiter and kept walking toward the restrooms. I was in frame for maybe 6 seconds. I fast-forwarded. 9:45 p.m. The DJ announced the sparkler exit setup. The room began to clear out. At 9:52 p.m., the room was nearly empty. Then movement. 2 figures walked into the frame. They moved quickly, purposefully. They didn't look like thieves sneaking in from the outside. They looked like they owned the place. One of them was wearing a white wedding dress. I hit pause. I zoomed in. It was Claire, and right next to her, holding a large tote bag that usually held her change of shoes, was Ryan. I pressed play. I watched as my sister, the weeping victim, the heartbroken bride, lifted the lid of the box. It wasn't locked. The decorative latch was just for show. She began grabbing handfuls of envelopes. She was ripping them open, frantically. Ryan was standing guard, looking toward the door. He said something to her. She snapped back, shoving cash into the tote bag. She threw the empty envelopes back into the box, but then Ryan shook his head. He grabbed a handful of the empty envelopes and shoved them into his jacket pockets, likely to dispose of them later so it wouldn't look obvious that they had been opened on the spot. But they left enough inside to make it look tampered with rather than emptied. It took them 3 minutes. At 9:56 p.m., they smoothed their clothes. Claire checked her makeup in the reflection of the window. Ryan kissed her on the forehead, patted the bag which was now bulging with cash, and they walked out toward the sparkler exit to be cheered by the very people they were stealing from. I sat back, the air leaving my lungs in a rush. They didn't just steal the money. They stole it from themselves to hide it, likely from my parents, or perhaps to hoard it away from joint accounts, or maybe just to stage a theft to claim insurance. Or, and this was the sickest part, to double dip. If they claimed it was stolen and blamed me, my parents would force me to repay the $7,000. They would keep the original $7,000 and get another $7,000 from me. It was a $14,000 swing. I looked at the freeze frame of Claire's face. She wasn't crying, she was smiling. It was a greedy, triumphant smile. A cold fury replaced my shock. My sadness evaporated. I wasn't the little sister anymore. I wasn't the sneaky one. I was the one with the evidence. I downloaded the file. I saved it to my hard drive. Then I saved it to the cloud. Then I reached into my desk drawer and pulled out a plain black USB flash drive. I transferred the file. Then I picked up my phone. I didn't text Claire. I texted my dad. To Christopher, I will bring the money, but I want to do it in person. I want everyone there. Mom, you, Claire, and Ryan, dinner tomorrow night at the house. I want this resolved face-to-face. His reply came 1 minute later. Christopher, good choice, we will be waiting. 7 p.m. I looked at the flash drive in my hand. It felt heavy, like a loaded weapon. See you at dinner, I whispered to the empty room. The morning of the dinner, I didn't wake up feeling like a victim. I woke up like a forensic accountant on the verge of closing a major case. The fear I had felt the previous night, the trembling hands, the nausea, had calcified into a cold, hard determination. My family wanted to talk about money. Fine, we would talk about money. But we weren't going to talk about my savings, we were going to talk about theirs. I sat at my kitchen table, a fresh pot of black coffee beside me, and logged into my work laptop. I wasn't doing this on company time, technically, but I was using the skills and the public record databases that my subscription fees paid for. I had the smoking gun video, but my training told me that theft is rarely an isolated incident. People don't just decide to rob their own wedding guests on a whim. There is always a precursor. There is always a pressure point. I started with Ryan. He liked to present himself as a high-flying business consultant. He drove a leased BMW 5 Series. He wore a Rolex that I had always suspected was a high-quality replica. My parents ate it up, bragging to their friends about their successful son-in-law who was in finance. I pulled up the public records for the county. I started with civil court records, nothing under his current address. I expanded the search to his previous address in the city. Bingo! 2 years ago, a judgment for $4,500 from a landlord for unpaid rent and damages. It was listed as satisfied only 6 months ago. Interesting, who paid that off? I dug deeper. I checked the UCC filings, Uniform Commercial Code. These are public records that lenders file when they have an interest in personal property, usually for business loans or high-risk personal loans. There was a filing from 4 months ago. The creditor wasn't a bank. It was a company called QuickCap Solutions, LLC. A quick Google search revealed they were a IG Interest, short-term lending agency, a predatory lender. The kind you go to when the banks have already said no. The secured collateral listed? Future receivables. It was a business loan, but for a consulting firm that had no website, no LinkedIn presence, and its registered address was a P.O. box at a UPS store. The amount financed, $15,000. I leaned back, sipping my coffee. Ryan was drowning. He had taken out a high-interest loan 4 months before the wedding. Why? To pay for the ring? To pay for the deposit on the BMW? It didn't matter. What mattered was that the payments on a loan like that would be aggressive, weekly draws. If he missed them, they would come after him hard. Then I looked at Claire. My sister had a job as a marketing coordinator. It paid decent money, maybe $55K a year. But her credit report, which I couldn't access legally without permission, wasn't necessary to see the pattern. I looked at her Venmo history, which she had foolishly left public. In the last 3 months, there were dozens of outgoing payments to Ryan. Captions like rent help, car payment, and groceries. She was subsidizing him. The rich husband was bleeding her dry, and now they were both bleeding out. The wedding wasn't just a party, it was a lifeline. They needed that cash box to be full. And when they realized the cash gifts might not cover the QuickCap loan and the honeymoon, they panicked. They decided to double dip. Steal the cash to hide it from the debt collectors or use it immediately, and then extort me for another $7,000 to cover the loss. It was a Ponzi scheme built on tulle and buttercream frosting. I printed everything: the judgment, the UCC filing, the screenshots of the Venmo transactions. I organized them into a crisp manila folder. Then I went to the bank. I withdrew $7,000 from my savings account in the form of a cashier's check made out to Claire and Ryan. The teller smiled at me, a late wedding gift. I looked at the check, the paper smooth and heavy in my hand. Something like that, it's for an education. Oh, are they going back to school? No, I said, sliding the check into an envelope. But they are definitely going to learn a lesson today. I went home, showered, and put on my court armor, a sharp navy blazer, tailored trousers, and heels that clicked with authority on the floor. I put the flash drive in my blazer pocket. I put the manila folder in my bag. I put the check in my purse. I was ready. The drive to my parents' house took 40 minutes. Usually, this drive was filled with a low-level anxiety, a rehearsal of what I would say to avoid criticism. Yes, Mom, I'm dating. No, Dad, I didn't get a promotion yet. Today, the anxiety was gone. It was replaced by a buzzing adrenaline, a hyper-awareness of every detail. The sun was setting as I pulled into the driveway, casting long shadows across the perfectly manicured lawn that my father prized above all else. His truck was there. Claire's car was there. Ryan's BMW was parked right in the center, taking up 2 spots as usual. I walked to the front door and didn't knock. I used my key. I stepped into the foyer. The smell of pot roast wafted from the kitchen, my mother's serious family discussion meal. "We're in the dining room," my father's voice boomed. I walked in. The table was set with the good china, which felt grotesque given the circumstances. My father sat at the head of the table. My mother was on his right. Claire and Ryan were seated across from the empty chair meant for me. Claire looked like a tragedy. She was wearing no makeup, her hair was in a messy bun, and she was wearing an oversized sweatshirt. She was playing the role of the traumatized victim to perfection. Ryan, on the other hand, looked twitchy. He was wearing a polo shirt that was too tight, and his leg was bouncing under the table. "Sit down," my father said. I pulled out the chair and sat. I placed my purse on the floor and my leather bag on the table. "I'm glad you came," Susan said, her voice tight and pinched. She didn't look me in the eye. She was looking at my hands as if checking for invisible handcuffs. "I was praying you would do the right thing, Olivia. I told your father, she's lost her way, but she's not evil. She'll fix this." "I'm here to fix it," I said calmly. "Do you have the money?" Ryan asked. He didn't even say hello. His eyes were locked on my bag. "I have a cashier's check for $7,000 right here," I said, tapping my purse. Ryan let out a visible breath, his shoulders sagging. Claire sniffled, wiping her dry eyes. "I just don't understand why you did it, Liv. Was it because I didn't let you give a speech? Was it because you're jealous that I got married first? I mean, stealing from my wedding. It's just so sick." "It is sick," I agreed, looking her dead in the eye. "It's a betrayal of the highest order." My father cleared his throat. "Let's not rehash the crime. Olivia is here to make restitution. We agreed that if she pays the full amount today, we will not involve the police. We will keep this within the family. But Olivia, you need to understand that things are going to change. We can't trust you around the house anymore." "I understand," I said. "Trust is a fragile thing. Once it's broken, it's almost impossible to get back." "Exactly," Susan said, nodding self-righteously. "I hope you're seeking help, Olivia, therapy, something." "I did a little investigation of my own," I said, ignoring her comment. I kept my voice light, conversational. "Because, you know, as a forensic accountant, it just didn't sit right with me. It's a bold crime. $7,000 in a public room with cameras." Ryan froze. The bouncing of his leg stopped instantly. "What do you mean, cameras?" "The venue," I said. "The Grandview Estate. Did you know their contract stipulates high-definition surveillance of all gift intake areas? Clause 14B, I read it when I booked the place for you." "There were no cameras in that corner," Ryan said quickly, too quickly. "I checked. I mean, we looked around. It was a dark corner." "You checked for cameras?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "We looked for the box," Claire interjected, her voice rising to a shriek. "After we realized the money was gone. Stop trying to distract us, Olivia. Just give us the check." "I'm not distracting you," I said. "I'm just curious. Because if I stole the money, surely the cameras would show it, right? And if the cameras show it, you'd have all the proof you need to send me to jail. Why didn't you ask the venue for the footage, Dad?" My father frowned. "We didn't need footage. Claire saw you, that's enough for me." "Eyewitness testimony is notoriously unreliable," I said, "especially when the witness has a motive to lie." How dare you? Susan slammed her hand on the table. You steal from your sister and then call her a liar at the dinner table? Give us the check and get out. You are not welcome to eat with us. I agree, Christopher said, his face reddening. Hand it over, now. Okay, I said, but before I do, I have a question for Ryan. I turned my gaze to him. He looked like a trapped animal. Sweat was beading on his upper lip. How is QuickCap Solutions treating you, Ryan? The silence that followed was absolute. It was the kind of silence where you could hear the refrigerator humming in the next room. Ryan's face drained of color, turning a sickly shade of gray. I don't know what you're talking about. QuickCap Solutions, I repeated, enunciating every syllable. The predatory lender you borrowed $15,000 from 4 months ago at an APR that would make a loan shark blush. The loan secured against the future receivables of a consulting business that doesn't seem to exist. That's a lie, Claire snapped, though her eyes darted nervously to her husband. Ryan is successful. He doesn't need loans like that. Really? I reached into my bag and pulled out the manila folder. I slid it across the polished mahogany table toward my father. Open it, Dad. I'm not looking at your fake papers, Christopher spat. This is just another one of your manipulations. You're trying to shift the blame. It's a public record, Dad, a UCC filing, and a judgment for unpaid rent from his last apartment, and Claire's Venmo history showing she's been paying his car note for 3 months. My father hesitated. The specificity of the accusations was getting to him. He looked at the folder, then at Ryan. Ryan, is this true? She's crazy, Ryan stammered, standing up. This is harassment. She hacked me. This is illegal. It's public record, I said calmly. And it establishes motive. You're broke, Ryan. You're drowning in debt. You needed that wedding cash to pay off the loan shark before they started calling your house. But the envelope box wasn't enough, was it? Or maybe you just got greedy. Why settle for $7,000 when you can steal $7,000 and then guilt-trip your wife's family into giving you another $7,000? Shut up, Claire screamed. She stood up too, knocking her chair back. You are just jealous because I have a husband who loves me and you're alone. You're trying to ruin my marriage because you're miserable. I'm trying to save you from a felon, I shot back, my voice finally rising, matching their energy. Claire, look at him. Look at his face. He knows I'm right. Susan stood up now, shaking her finger at me. That is enough. I will not have you slander this young man in this house. He has been nothing but respectful and kind. You are projecting your own failures onto him. I want you to leave. Leave the check and get out. I don't want to see you until you've apologized. You want the check? I stood up, grabbing my purse. I have it, it's right here. I pulled out the envelope. Ryan's eyes locked onto it. He looked like he was about to lunge across the table. But I'm not giving it to you, I said, because I don't owe you a dime. You admitted it, Dad shouted. You said you brought the money. I brought the money to show you that I could pay it if I wanted to show you that $7,000 is not a life-changing amount of money for me. But for them, I pointed at Claire and Ryan, it's everything. Get out, my father roared, pointing at the door. I am disowning you, Olivia. You are finished in this family. Fine, I said. Disown me. But before I walk out that door, you are going to watch one thing. You said Claire saw me at the table. You said I was the only one there. She saw you, Susan cried. Then you should have no problem watching the video of the actual theft, I said. I walked over to the large flat-screen TV mounted above the fireplace. It was the pride and joy of my father's living room. What are you doing? Claire asked, her voice suddenly small. What video? The security footage from the Grandview estate, I said, reaching into my pocket and pulling out the black flash drive. Camera 4. 9:52 p.m., the exact moment the money disappeared. Don't plug that in, Ryan said, his voice low and threatening. He took a step toward me. Sit down, Ryan, I warned, my voice icy. Or I call the police right now and show them the footage instead. My father looked between me and Ryan. The confidence in his eyes was faltering. He saw the fear in Ryan's posture. He saw the panic in Claire's eyes. "Let her play it," Christopher said quietly. "Bob, no," Susan protested. "It's just going to be some trick." "I want to see it," Christopher said, his voice hardening. "If she's lying, we'll know in 10 seconds. Play it, Olivia." I plugged the drive into the USB port on the side of the TV. The screen flickered to life. The folder popped up. I selected the file labeled Evidence Cam 4, MP4. The loading circle spun for a second. "Prepare yourselves," I said, stepping back from the TV so they had a clear view. Because sneaky doesn't even begin to describe what you're about to see. The room was dim, illuminated only by the cold, blue light of the 60-inch television screen. I stepped to the side, leaning against the mantel of the fireplace, my arms crossed. I watched them watch the screen. It was a surreal moment, seeing my family, my tormentors, frozen in a tableau of impending doom. On the screen, the timestamp read 9:51:45 p.m. The reception hall was largely empty, the tables cluttered with empty glasses and crumpled napkins. The DJ's lights were still swirling in the background, casting long, moving shadows across the dance floor. "This is ridiculous," Claire muttered, her voice trembling. She had sat back down in her chair, perhaps seeking stability, and picked up her fork, stabbing nervously at a piece of roast beef on her plate as if eating would normalize the situation. "There's nothing to see. You're just wasting our time." "Just watch," I said softly. At 9:52, 10 p.m., the movement started. Two figures entered the frame from the left, moving with a quick, furtive urgency that was unmistakable. The camera angle was high, looking down at the gift table, but the resolution was crystal clear. It was Claire, and it was Ryan. My mother gasped. It was a sharp intake of breath that sounded like she had been punched in the gut. Christopher leaned forward, his eyes narrowing, his mouth slightly open. On screen, Claire, wearing her custom-altered Vera Wang gown, looked around the room. She wasn't looking for guests to thank. She was checking the sightlines. Ryan stood with his back to the table, acting as a lookout, his head swiveling left and right. "That's," my father whispered, "that's you." "No," Claire whimpered. She was staring at the screen, her face pale. The fork in her hand was shaking violently. On the video, Claire reached for the box. She didn't treat it with the reverence of a bride appreciating gifts. She attacked it. She flipped the lid open. Her hands, manicured and ring-clad, dove into the pile of envelopes. We watched in high-definition silence as she began ripping them open. She wasn't reading the cards. She wasn't looking at the heartfelt messages from aunts and cousins. She was tearing the paper, extracting the cash and checks, and tossing the cards back into the box. "Hurry up," Ryan seemed to mouth on the screen, turning to help her. He grabbed a handful of envelopes, stuffing some into his jacket pocket and ripping others open, shoving the cash into the tote bag Claire was holding open. The greed on their faces was palpable. It wasn't just desperation, it was a frenzied, ugly avarice. They looked like vultures picking at a carcass. At 9:54:30 p.m., Claire held up a thick envelope, likely from my grandmother, and pulled out a stack of $100 bills. She kissed the money, actually kissed it, then she shoved it into the bag. In the dining room, the silence was shattered by a single metal. Lick-clang. Claire dropped her fork. It hit the fine china plate with a sound that rang like a gunshot in the quiet room. She didn't pick it up. She just stared at the image of herself kissing the stolen cash, her mouth agape, her eyes wide with a horror that had nothing to do with remorse and everything to do with being caught. "You," Susan's voice was a whisper, barely audible. She turned her head slowly to look at her golden child. "You stole it." "It's not what it looks like," Ryan shouted, jumping up from the table. He pointed at the screen. That's out of context. We were just moving it for safekeeping." "Moving it?" I asked, my voice cutting through his panic. "By ripping open the envelopes, by stuffing the cash into a gym bag and leaving the cards behind, by kissing the money, Claire." "We were going to deposit it," Ryan yelled, sweat now pouring down his face. We didn't want it to get stolen. So you took it for safekeeping, Christopher said, his voice rising, a deep, rumbling baritone of fury. And then, you called me and told me Olivia stole it. You told me you saw her. Claire stammered. She looked from the TV to our father. Daddy, please, you don't understand, the pressure. The wedding costs so much. You lied to me, Christopher roared, slamming his fist onto the table. The glasses rattled. You looked me in the eye, crying, and told me your sister was a thief. You tried to make me have her arrested. It was Ryan's idea, Claire screamed, the dam finally breaking. She pointed a trembling finger at her husband. He made me do it. He said we needed the money for the loan sharks. He said if we didn't pay them, they would take the car. He said blaming Olivia was the only way to get double. You witch, Ryan turned on her, his face contorted. You were the one who said Olivia was an easy target. You said, Mom already thinks she's sneaky, they'll believe anything. You wanted the honeymoon. You wanted the Bali trip. I didn't want to go to jail, Claire shrieked, sobbing hysterically now. You ruined everything. I watched them turn on each other, the perfect couple dissolving into a puddle of recriminations and hatred. It was ugly, it was pathetic, and it was the most satisfying thing I had ever seen. Susan was weeping silently, her face buried in her hands. The image of the sneaky sister she had constructed in her mind was shattering, replaced by the reality of the daughter she had spoiled into a monster. You wanted double, Christopher said, his voice shaking with disgust. He was looking at Ryan. You stole $7,000 from the guests, and you wanted another $7,000 from Olivia. You tried to extort my daughter. Christopher, please, Ryan begged, holding up his hands. It's just business. We were in a tight spot. We can fix this. I can. Get out, Christopher said. What? Get out, my father stood up, knocking his heavy chair backward. Get out of my house. Both of you, get out before I kill you. Daddy, Claire wailed. Don't you daddy me, he shouted, his face purple with rage. You are a liar, you are a thief, and you tried to destroy your sister's life to cover your own greed. I am ashamed. I am ashamed that you carry my name. Ryan grabbed his keys off the table. He didn't wait for Claire. He bolted for the door. Claire stood up, sobbing, looking at me. Olivia, please, help me. Tell him to stop. I looked at her. I looked at the sister I had protected for 20 years, the sister I had driven to school, the sister I had bilayed out, and I felt nothing. The cord was cut. I think you should go, Claire, I said calmly. You have a honeymoon to cancel. She wailed again and ran out the door after Ryan. We heard the front door slam, then the screech of tires as Ryan peeled out of the driveway, likely leaving her to drive her own car. The silence returned to the dining room, but now it was filled with the wreckage of a family. I walked over to the TV and pulled out the flash drive. The screen went black. I turned to my parents. They were both staring at the empty chairs where the golden couple had just been sitting. Susan looked up at me, her eyes red and swollen. Olivia, she whispered, I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, I said, picking up my purse. You already said it all. You said I was sneaky. You said I was jealous. You said you knew I was capable of this. We were wrong, Christopher said, his voice hoarse. He looked old suddenly. The fight had drained out of him. We were so wrong. I am so sorry, Olivia. I know you are, I said. But sorry doesn't fix the fact that you were ready to send me to jail yesterday. You didn't ask me for my side. You didn't hesitate. You just believed the worst of me because it was easier than believing the truth about them. I walked to the door. Wait, Susan said, standing up unsteadily. Where are you going? Stay, P. Lise, let us make you dinner. Let us talk. I looked at the pot roast on the table, the serious talk meal. I have a dinner reservation, I lied, with people who know I don't steal. Olivia, please, Dad said, don't leave like this. I'm not leaving like this, Dad, I said, opening the front door. I'm leaving with my head up, and I'm leaving with my $7,000. I stepped out into the cool night air. Behind me, I heard my mother burst into fresh tears. I didn't look back. The fallout was swift, brutal, and entirely public. I didn't have to leak the video. I didn't have to ruin Claire's reputation. She did it herself. Or rather, the truth did. 3 days after the dinner, Ryan's BMW was repossessed from the driveway of the apartment complex where they lived. It happened in broad daylight, and a neighbor, one of the bridesmaids, actually saw it and posted about it in the group chat. The facade of the wealthy consultant crumbled overnight. The quick-cap loan shark didn't care about family drama, they just wanted their money. When Ryan couldn't pay, they garnished his wages from the temp agency he was actually working for, not the consulting firm he claimed to own. Claire and Ryan filed for annulment 4 weeks later. Apparently, once the money ran out and the lies were exposed, there wasn't much love left to sustain them. Ryan tried to blame Claire for the theft idea in court to avoid liability for the venue security breach, which Linda, the manager, had reported to the police after I told her the truth, but the judge wasn't impressed. They were both ordered to complete community service and pay a fine for the theft, though since the victims were technically themselves and their guests, no jail time was served. However, the social sentence was lifelong. As for my parents, they tried. Oh, they tried hard. My mother sent flowers. My father sent a check for $5,000 as an apology gift. I returned the check. I donated the flowers to a nursing home. I didn't cut them off completely. That would have required an emotional energy I didn't want to spend. Instead, I placed them in a box, much like the evidence folder. I engaged with them on my terms. I visited on holidays for a few hours. I was polite. I was successful, but I was distant. The dynamic had shifted permanently. They no longer criticized my career or my single status. They walked on eggshells around me, terrified that I would leave again. They had lost their golden child, and they knew they were one wrong move away from losing their spare. Susan eventually admitted to me, months later, that she had started therapy. She told me she was working on understanding why she had pitted us against each other. I wanted Claire to be the version of me that was happy, she said, and I wanted you to be the version of me that was strong. I punished you for your strength. It was a start, but forgiveness is a long road, and I wasn't in a rush to walk it. 6 months later, I was promoted to senior partner at my firm. The celebration dinner was at a high-end steakhouse downtown. I invited a few friends and colleagues. As we were ordering, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Claire. Claire, hey Liv, I know you hate me, but I'm really struggling. Ryan left me with all the debt. I'm living in a studio apartment and eating ramen. Can I borrow $500 just for groceries? I promise I'll pay you back. I looked at the message. I remembered the little girl who ate the cookies and blamed me. I remembered the bride who kissed the stolen money. I remembered the sister who told me she would ruin my career. I didn't feel anger, I didn't feel pity, I just felt clarity. I typed a reply. Me, I think you should ask Mom and Dad. They always had a soft spot for your stories. Then I blocked the number. I put the phone face down on the table and looked up at my friends. The waiter arrived with a bottle of champagne. What are we celebrating specifically? One of my colleagues asked, raising her glass. I smiled, a genuine, unburdened smile that reached my eyes. We're celebrating balance, I said, clinking my glass against hers. And the fact that the ledger is finally clear.